and his life has turned around. He's no longer drinking, he's off the drugs, and he's helping people. And I just go, that is powerful. And I watched, and this guy, as his eye patch came on, oh my goodness, the smile on his face.
Pam, you've just come back from Papua New Guinea, and you were sharing some amazing stories with me a little bit earlier today. I'd love to hear those, but before we do, share with me, what is 10,000 Toes?
Okay, well, 10,000 Toes is all about turning the tide on diabetes, and particularly the focus is in the South Pacific. Now, some people say, well, we have an issue here in Australia, so why aren't you focusing here? And the main reason, Tim, is because in the islands you don't have access to, the doctor at the local corner, and so therefore people go for years and years and sometimes have never had a health checkup. And so 10,000 Toes works into that space. Now, as part of my role here at Adventist Health, we were looking at everything from diabetes to heart, just trying to solve every health issue. And we went, you know what? It's too big. And so let's focus on something that we're very passionate about. And at the time, Dr. Chester Kumar, Dr. Paul Rankin and myself both had family members that had diabetes issues. And so that was the common thread.
Wow. And so how do you identify people who are at risk of diabetes or who may have diabetes?
From a very simple screening test. So these days, we provide our ambassadors, and we've got 8,000 of those right across the Pacific. So an exciting number these days. They get a backpack, glucometer, so they check their their sugars, blood pressure machine, scales, and a tape measure so we can do height and weight to get their BMI. And from those simple testings, we can tell if somebody is number one, pre-diabetic, or worse, diabetic. And the number of people that we test that do not know that they have diabetes or on that cusp of becoming a full-blown type 2 diabetic.
And I've heard you talk about one of the horrible impacts of diabetes, and this is represented in your logo where you've got a foot and there's a toe missing.
Right.
Explain what that's all about.
So there's 30,000 amputations a year, and if you do the calculations, that works out every 20 minutes, right through the day, right through the night, that somebody is having an amputation. It could be their toe, their foot, or right up to above their knee. It even can be a hand, but we generally find that it is leg related. It's a terrible stat. And the worst part is it's all lifestyle related. So many of them can be reversed and stopped. And we're finding this, that as the campaign goes on, and we're in our 6th year, that we're getting some wonderful stories of people having life-changing experiences and being able to put a stop to their diabetes going from pre to diabetes, or even no longer even a pre-diabetic.
So how do you educate people about taking the right pathway or making the right choices? What sort of approach do you take from 10,000 Toes perspective?
So once we've done a screening on somebody and we identify their health needs, we say to them, are you interested in learning a lifestyle intervention program? And if so, we have a program coming up right here, done by locals from your community that can go on the journey with you. So they'll come along and they all start on this program, 10 weeks, but that's not where it finishes. And I think that's the exciting thing about 10,000 Toes is we train up local ambassadors that are going to journey with that person for the rest of their life, if that person wants that. And so it becomes a friendship that is built up, and there's lots of opportunity to do health right across the 7 dimensions, because what we eat and exercise is only the physical. We have 6 other dimensions that we focus on. We call it holistic health.
And I love that idea, that notion of working with local people, having local ambassadors. How do you find these people?
Word of mouth.
Okay.
Church groups, Governments come to us and say, we have a group, we've got some money set aside for young people. Would you train up a group of young people from this particular village to do the work that 10,000 Toes is doing? There is so many opportunities. We actually don't need to go and recruit. They actually come to us. We've got a lot of church members that are involved, but a big uptake by young people. It's amazing.
No, that's so encouraging that you've identified a problem and now you're educating, you've got diagnostic tools, and you're finding local people to help address that. On a broader sense, you were sharing with me a little bit earlier today that you've just returned part of a large team who was in Papua New Guinea, and it was called the Mega Clinic.
Yes.
And you were showing me some photos. Just sensational, the number of people who were engaging or wanting to engage with this service. But let's start at square one. What is the Mega Clinic? What was it all about?
Okay, so Adventist World Radio decided that they wanted to do a health program leading up to the PNG for Christ that was rolling out in Papua New Guinea at Mt Hagen, which is basically in the centre of Papua New Guinea.
Sure.
And so they said, would 10,000 Toes come along and do all the screening, which we called the triage, that went into the other 7 services that were being provided. So we would test them for those blood pressure, glucose, height, weight, BMI, all that kind of thing. And then we would identify them, put a band on them, and they would go either to dental, to eyes, to medical, to peds for children, for women's health, to counselling, to pharmacy, have their eyes checked for a new pair of glasses. There was lots of opportunities for people right around to uptake, I guess, a health service that was very unique to Papua New Guinea.
And, one of the questions that I often hear people ask is, how can I, as in my church, be relevant? How do I understand the needs of my community? And people often ask that question. And it's a great question to have. But particularly, you're very aware, and Adventist World Radio was very aware of the health needs of the people. And particularly from the photos that you've shared with me, and hopefully we can share some photos in this video, but you showed me pictures of hundreds, if not thousands of people queuing, waiting. Tell me a little bit more about that.
So the first morning, we were driving from our hotel to the location of where we were doing the checks. And there was just streams of people walking the same direction our bus was going. And we had to slow down because there were buses in front of us. And I discovered that all these people walking and the buses in front of us were all going to the same place that I was going, but they were going from the point of view of needing to have a health, or they're wanting to see health. We've got stories of people walking for 2 days, lining up at 2 a.m. in the morning because they'd heard the queues were going to be long and they did not want to miss out. It was just a huge process of getting people from outside, from those buses, into the registration. Then we would triage them. Then they would go and sit in a waiting area where there was a concert. There was a stage there and we were presenting health talks and sharing health tips and Bible tips, so many opportunities while they waited to get called up to one of their services. I tell you what, it was like an expo that Australia would put on, that thousands and thousands. And in 4 days, Tim, we saw 10,400 people.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
Incredible.
But we probably sent thousands away that we were not able to see in that time. But I'm not discouraged. There were times when I felt a little discouraged, but I kept saying to everybody, 10,000 Toes is not leaving. We are actually staying on here. We are training ambassadors during the next period, which was during the PNG for Christ, to continue some of the services that we were offering there. So that was kind of like, we weren't abandoning them. We were actually staying on. Locals were going to be trained up and the work would continue. It'll look different, but it would still continue and give opportunity for people to at least find out their diabetes, their blood pressure, all those kind of things, which is the starting point. and we can turn around their health just from those simple testings.
And Pam, if anyone's wondering what is PNG for Christ, I'm actually doing another interview. So watch out for the listeners at home or viewers at home. Watch out for our video about PNG for Christ. Thousands and thousands of people have committed their life to Jesus as a result of an enormous amount of work being done by people on the ground there. So really exciting. Can you share with me some impact stories, from the clinic or in your experience in general from this ministry? What impact are you and the team making in this space?
I certainly can. In fact, Tim, I've probably got thousands and thousands. It's actually very exciting. Nearly every day my phone, because the way we communicate is through WhatsApp because it's a free service that happens and works well in the islands, but I'm getting pictures all the time of screenings that are being done, impact stories of this person who, here's one, went to an LMA program and in the short period of 10 weeks lost 12 kgs.
Wow.
That person talks about how their self-esteem just went up and they felt so empowered to be able to go out and share what they'd learned with their family members who also suffered with weight issues. So, when you start hearing the flow-on effect, the pay it forward, okay, so we impacted this person's life, but they decided to become a 10,000 Toes ambassador who now has got reach to their family members who are now on the same program, who are now losing weight. And so you're starting to get families that are impacted, then villages, and it keeps going. And if you think I get excited, I rather do, because it is exciting. There's stories of people that have been addicted to drugs and alcohol. One young guy in his 20s literally stumbled, and I use that word because he was drunk at the time, across this program where they were talking about health, and he was eavesdropping and he heard them talking about alcohol and the effects that it has, and he was so impressed he went, you know what, I need to find out more. And so the next day he went knocking on one of the facilitators' doors and said, can I please get involved in this 10,000 Toes campaign? The facilitator had heard about this guy because he had a reputation. He'd been in jail. He'd actually stoned a school. He was causing the village a lot of problems. And everyone was sort of whispering, saying, don't get involved, don't get involved, he will cause a lot of problems. But this facilitator of ours went, you know what, everybody deserves a chance, and gave this gentleman an opportunity. It started off with just setting up chairs for the program that night, and he came. He was there on time. He set the chairs up, and over the weeks and the months that followed, his duties became more and more, and he fell in love and he got trained to become a facilitator.
Wow.
And his life has turned around. He's no longer drinking, he's off the drugs, and he's helping people. And I just go, that is powerful. We might be looking at diabetes, but diabetes, as I said earlier, is one in a whole list of lifestyle issues. And so while we might be focusing here, we actually can be helping people in all walks of life.
That's incredible. And even I heard you sharing a story about people lining up for cataract surgery.
Oh, yes.
Tell me a little bit about that.
There was two guys in particular. They were both sitting there. One had a patch already on his eye, so that indicated to me that he'd already had one cataract done. But he had a bit of sticky tape above the other eye, which was the indicator that he had to have his second one. So the communication was a little bit hard because I don't speak pidgin and his English wasn't really good, but I was saying to him, oh, so you've had one done and you're having the other? And he's saying yes. And just then Dr. Jacob came up and it was his turn to take off the eye patch, and I watched, and this guy, as his eye patch came on, oh my goodness, the smile on his face. Without him having to say a word, I knew that he could see. And he was going to have the other one done, and I caught up with him afterwards, and he said, through an interpreter this time, that he had not been able to see for the last 3 years as the cataracts had grown and grown, but he'd had cataracts for years and years in one eye, and he said he could not wait to go home and see his wife because he had not seen her for years and years. And his smile was huge. And I wanted to cry. I was just touched about things that we take for granted. You know, we have a little bit of cataracts. We just book in, go see the doctor, and they send us to a specialist, and we have it done. But out there, it's unknown.
Wow.
So we're working now to see how we can get Dr. Jacob, who is one of the world cataracts operations. He does them in 2 minutes. A cataracts in 2 minutes, a life-changing thing in 2 minutes. It's just unbelievable. And we want to bring him back to PNG because he really gave sight to the blind.
Wow. And when you look at the life and ministry of Jesus, you know, we often saw Jesus mingling with people, healing their physical needs and transforming their lives physically, but also then that opened the door to spiritual transformation. Yeah. And that's incredible. Just picturing what you're talking about, the man seeing for the first time in years. What incredible.
Won't his wife get a surprise?
Yeah, you will. And so, Pam, tell me then, what's the future for 10,000 Toes? Where are you headed with this ministry?
Oh, wow. It's funny because when we started this, we thought, if we could save 10,000 toes or have impact on 10,000 people, wouldn't that be amazing? We've surpassed that, and we're working with governments, getting MOUs. So it's a very exciting for the 10,000 Toes campaign because as we get the governments on board, the reach can increase. Because one of our biggest barriers is the fact that every time we test somebody, it costs money. And in the Pacific countries, they don't have money to spare. They barely have money to put food on their tables. So this is an extra, and we do all these services for free. And we do it because of the generosity of people back here in Australia and New Zealand. And after the PNG for Christ, where we had testings at heaps and heaps of sites, and if your viewers watch this later on, they'll learn more about that, but we are out of consumables. So we are needing to have a big fundraising campaign so that we can keep doing this work of pricking, drawing blood, testing it, and finding out somebody's health needs through doing that. So there is a big need. We are getting governments on board who are supporting us, but it takes time. It takes time because we have to have proof of concept, and we are getting that, but it still will take years till it'll be totally self-sustainable.
So how can somebody support, become an ambassador or support financially? Where do they go to find out more information?
Well, they can jump onto our webpage, which is www.10,000toes.com. They can follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And on the webpage, there is opportunity for them to donate. We are starting a new fundraising campaign because we want to convert every clinic that belongs to the Seventh-day Adventist Church into a wellness clinic, because there is no point bringing somebody and putting a Band-Aid on the problem and the problem continues on. So wellness is the answer. We know that. We've got so much evidence, and so we want to train up all our nurses and our doctors at all these clinics right around the Pacific. And we can only do that through the support of people who jump onto 10,000 Toes, donate, and we partner with ADRA, so it's tax deductible, so anything $2 or more. If they're working, they can use that in the financial year that's coming up to a close very soon. So a great opportunity to help us out in that way.
And what a worthy cause it is. Before we finish though, I'd love to understand some of the barriers and challenges that you've had in this ministry in 10,000 Toes. For example, you were telling me some of the climate wasn't very favourable recently in Papua New Guinea. Just tell me about some of the constraints or problems that you faced.
Okay, so at the Mega Health Clinic, rain. Oh my goodness. When it rains in Papua New Guinea, it's like getting a bucket on every single person and just dumping it all at the same time. And you end up, we had rivers flowing through our tents. And so we were putting down beams of and we were trying to walk along those to keep out of the mud, but in the end it was impossible, so I just started sloshing through it. It just became part of your daily routine. But as soon as the sun came out, it would dry up. But then what do you have? Sunburn. So one minute we've got mud on our feet and the next minute my nose is pink because the sun is so intense. So that's some of the obvious, but then there's other things like internet. I do a lot of training online. We'll be halfway through a facilitated training and all of a sudden everybody drops off or they freeze. And so there's those issues. There's always challenges, but you know what? Nothing is impossible. We just keep pressing on and know that we're saving toes every 20 minutes. We need to be accountable for every 20 minutes.
So finally, there's people watching who have their own passions, their own ministries. They want to do something at their local church or they're part of an organisation trying to make a difference. What advice can you give from your experience about how can they achieve impact? How can they be successful in meeting the needs of their communities? What advice can you offer?
Over the years, I've learnt that we can have very sophisticated programs and we might impact for a day or two, but there's nothing better than becoming a friend to somebody. Some of the best stories that we have got is when our ambassadors take their backpack, they literally put it on their back, they go door to door and ask people would they like a free health service. People are a little bit like, free, even in the islands? But you imagine in Australia. But there's many ways that we can connect with our neighbours, because once we get to know people, then they want to know what we know. They're not really interested about what we know unless we can convince them that we want to be their friends first. And I have learnt over and over again and been reminded with the 10,000 Toes campaign, care about people. And when we care about them, they will open up and we'll be able to enter their lives and go on a great journey, whether, it's health, whether it's spiritual or what it is. Journey with people. People are lonely. Depression is such a huge problem here in Australia. They just need somebody to say hello to them and show that they care.
Thank you so much for your time, Pam. And may God bless your ministry as you make a difference.